All right, so back in 2019, Remedy released Control, and it had tons of raving reviews. A lot of people love this game. I think there were some people who kind of thought it was okay, but I think overall, pretty much most people can say that Control is a really good game. That Remedy is one of those developers that people just love, like like their favorite developers, right? And to be honest, I've never played a Remedy game. I didn't play Alan Wake or Max Payne or anything like that. So with the announcement of Control Resonant, it actually looked like a pretty cool trailer. So I figured, why not go and check out Control, see if this is a good game, see if I resonate with it, you know? So in this video, yeah, I'm gonna talk about Control. I played and beat this game. I'm gonna give like my review of Control pretty much. If you guys can do me a favor, like the video, subscribe, etc., and let me know down below your guys' thoughts on the game. With all that out of the way, let's hop into this one. Control. So this is an interesting game from a surface level and then from everything that's underneath the surface. Full disclosure, I didn't read all the articles and pamphlets and all the collectibles that you get. I did struggle a lot with understanding exactly what's going on in the narrative. I think there's a lot going on that's left subliminal, a lot that's going on that's left unspoken, a lot that's very contextual. And I this is definitely one of those games that the deeper you get into it and the more you kind of give it, the more it'll give back to you, at least narrative wise. If you guys don't know what Control's like premises, you play this character Jesse Faden. You go into the Federal Bureau of Control, which is the FBC. It's like they're kind of like the FBI, but for like paranormal things that happen. They collect and study weird phenomenon and objects of interest. Uh, Jesse Faden happens to go in there as they go under lockdown mode. They're shutting everything down. There's something called a hiss, which is like taking over pretty much everything, and so everyone's kind of like in ultra lockdown mode. Jesse through situations gets promoted to director, which it's one of those things that I think in the game surface level they kind of just explain it as like, oh, you happen to be the person as a director. Like y- it doesn't really go far as like actually saying why Jesse's the director in your face, right? As I like looked up like lore videos and try to figure out what the hell did I miss in this game, there was definitely a lot more pieces to the to the puzzle that I missed that other people picked up on. So just outright saying like, if you're playing the game for the first time or if you play the game or whatever and you don't understand why she became the director, there's definitely a reason why, but I can't explain to you because I didn't get that. I was just as confused as everybody. For me, it was just okay, cool. She's the director. I don't care. Like whatever. Like she got promoted somehow because she's clearly the most gifted, talented person in this building because she's whooping ass and no one else is. So makes sense. Give her the gun and call it a day. So for me, that made sense. Not necessarily like the most compelling narrative thing off rip, but everything that kind of happens afterwards is where you start to kind of see, that there's definitely more here. So as a director, she's kind of trying to free the FBC from their control from of the hiss and trying to eliminate the hiss. That's kind of like her surface objective, but her real objective is she came to the FBC because they took her brother and she's trying to find her brother. She hadn't seen her brother since they were younger, but she knows that her brother's there and he's being experimented on, and she's trying to essentially get with her brother again. She kind of like slowly discloses that information to people she trusts as she kind of runs into like different, you know, different, characters in this game. There's always this like hesitant of, do I trust them, do I not trust them, how much of them are supportive of me as a new director, how much of them are supportive of like FBC as a whole, et cetera, et cetera. So there's always this like uncanny valley when you communicate with everybody, and everything always feels very like Black Mirror, like, if that makes sense. If anyone's seen Black Mirror or anything, everything just seems very like something's off, nothing makes sense. People are speaking directly, but there's just always something missing. Context is just not there, and it's one of those type of things that I can see how a lot of people would hate that. Me personally, again, I kind of just shrugged it off. Personally, none of it made me want to dive deep into what's going on here. I kind of understood the gist of what's going on because I've seen a lot of 80s 90s sci-fi movies, so like you kind of get that there's something weird, and it's not like I guess my biggest issue with the narrative is Jesse Faden as a character isn't a attractive enough character, personality wise, that makes me want to understand more of what's going on with her. Personally, Jesse Faden to me is a very wet blanket. She has one tone of voice throughout pretty much the entirety of the game. She doesn't really have a whole lot of character development. I feel like she kind of goes into this with one goal and one personality, and she leaves it with that same personality. Personally, throughout the narrative, I don't feel like we accomplished a lot. Personally, like I know we eliminate the hiss and stuff like that, but I feel like I don't know, for something that felt like there was so much deeper going on here. By the end of it, I felt like it was a very surface level narrative, and I think that's my biggest struggle with it. As far as the things I really like about this narrative, I like the mystery. I like the horror undertones in this game. This isn't a horror game by no means. It's not scary, but there's definitely an off kilter to it that makes you feel uneasy throughout the entire game, and I really like that. I like at least like the ambiance and the feeling of this whole place is very mysterious. It's very crazy. I really like that. So that was very appealing. So as a you know world that the Remedyverse is, I'm sold on it. I think it was really cool. I just wasn't necessarily in particular in love with any of the characters. So I think that's like the biggest miss. As far as the gameplay, this is I think where Control shines. The gameplay is super fun. From like just the regular gunplay where you're just shooting people, it feels very arcadey at times. I think this is a power fantasy to like the levels of once you start to develop more supernatural abilities like telekinesis, levitating, and stuff like that. Like it becomes just such a playground from levitating from this platform to that platform, from throwing things across, from throwing you know grenades and launching other enemies into other enemies and exploding them. Stuff like that was so much fun. I love the different weapons that you can use. My favorite was definitely the shatter, whatever it is called, where it's like you get up close and it just deals a lot of damage up close. Um, a lot of that stuff I think was just peak gaming. I think Control is like a game developer's favorite type of game because it's just so cool, so amazing, so awesome. There's tons of action, like nonstop action. I felt like I was always being, progressed forward through what's going on in the narrative because of the gameplay. The gameplay made me want to experience more of this game. And I guess that's why I was able to like shrug off a lot of what was going on in the story or the characters because I just loved playing this game. I think FBC, the Federal Bureau of Control, was such a cool playground to play in. The different rooms and the different environments were cool to like just kind of see and find out what I can throw, what's gonna help me, you know, move this to that or take down enemies. I think the boss fights were really cool. I loved engaging with pretty much every boss here. There was never a moment gameplay wise that I was bored. It made me want to like play more of this gameplay. I wanted like after I beat it, I kind of just wanted to play the DLC and figure out how much more of this game can I get out of this? How much can I wring more out of this? I love like as you kind of power up her skill tree, you feel the progression. When I get 25% extra launch damage, I feel that it's it's just such a intuitive game as well. There's never moments where like I had to think about what I was doing. It kind of felt almost arcadey in the sense of like the waves of enemies and how quickly you can clear out a room of enemies was super fun. I think the only thing with the gameplay I didn't really like was like the mods. I pretty much just kind of kept the same mods throughout the entire thing, and most of the mods just kind of felt like it became too much. Um, pretty much you fill up with mods very very fast, and then you can deconstruct them for other points, and you can spend that on other things. But just ultimately, I feel like the mods didn't really add a whole lot to what I wanted to do, especially like with the amount of different mods you get. None of them made me. I was never compelled to utilize different mods or anything like that. Once I kind of stuck to a mod, it's just that's the mod that I stuck with. Um, but yeah, ultimately though, like from a gameplay standpoint, Control is, peak gameplay. And I think the only thing that I'm concerned of is moving forward from this, if they're not going to use the service weapon, the service gun. um I feel like the service gun was so fun. And like again, I don't think it was the best part of Control's gameplay, because obviously the psychedelic powers were definitely the best part of the game. But the service weapon was a cool secondary option. It was a cool shoot from a distance, have different style of guns. I love the way it transforms into different things. It's such a cool animation. It's so seamless. I loved how they simplified the fact that there's not different bullets per gun. It's just one ammunition type for all the guns, and you don't have to worry about running out of ammo because it just recharges and stuff like that. And if you do have to recharge your gun, there's other different options, from like meleeing or throwing other stuff. Like, it's just such a cool way of playing this game that makes you feel overpowered, and there was never a moment that I felt like I couldn't handle what was in front of me because of the different skill sets that I had. It's a game that as you progress forward, you feel yourself getting stronger and stronger and stronger, and almost to the point where you feel unbeatable. Um, I think the other thing that this game does really well is mixing like the different rooms and the different psychedelic stuff that's like making you feel like the more you navigate this Federal Bureau of Control, the more you start to internally map exactly where rooms are. But then they have weird ways of making certain rooms look slightly different, or like, I don't know, kind of still getting lost as I progressed forward. Every time I entered a new area, I felt immediately lost. But by the end of that chapter's mission or whatever, I felt like I knew that place inside and out. It felt almost kind of like old school Resident Evil, where like once you enter a new area of it, there's definitely like some type of puzzle or something that's gonna make you feel lost. But by the end of like that section of the game, like you can run inside and out of every door without thinking about it. You know where things are certain at. When you get a certain clue, you're like, oh, I know where that's supposed to go because I remember seeing that, and you know exactly how to navigate it. Stuff like that I felt like controls like map layout, and the way rooms are built, and the way the elevators are placed, and the fast travel points and all that stuff. I think we're set up very creatively, where it just harkened back to games like Resident Evil 2, etc. for me. Um, there's a moment in this game. There's a section in this game. It's like maybe 5 minutes or 2 minutes long, where it's probably one of the coolest things I've seen in gaming in like forever. It's always gonna go down. Like, if you play this game and you're not liking this game, you got to get to at least one section in the game. It's like the maze. That maze room is guaranteed one of the coolest things ever. If you play this game just to get to there, I'm like, that is the reason I play this game almost entirely. And it sucks it only lasts 2 minutes, but man, I felt like such a badass doing that. Uh, my last critique with this game is, I think there's some of those high moments like that, like the highest of high moments, but there's some of the lowest of low moments. Like, waiting on elevators bothers me in this game. It feels like you could have just made this a cutscene, and I would have been fine with that, or even a loading screen. I would have been fine with that. I hate that you have to stand there and wait and wait and wait for elevators. I don't like when you're on a platform and it's moving slowly across the air and you're just standing there with nothing to do. Like, at that point, like, just skip this with a loading screen. I would have been a lot more happy with that. But overall, man, like, Control is one of those games that have so much going on for it, gameplay wise, that makes up for everything. And if you're into like narratives and characters and stuff like that, like, you can definitely dive deep and figure out exactly what's being said here. Um, as someone who, again, this is my first step into like the Remedyverse and understanding everything that like that development team is doing, I'm interested. I might check out Alan Wake after this, or Alan Wake 2, and just kind of see the interconnections of everything, just because it does seem cool. Um, but I just really, really wish the characters were more interesting, where I wanted to know more about them. That is another big struggle that I hope they fix with the games moving forward. Is I hope they make these characters more compelling and more likable. Unfortunately, like, there's nothing objectively wrong with Jessie Faden. She's okay, but I don't want to play as just an okay character. For someone who does some of the coolest stuff in gaming, she should be more of a badass, in my opinion. Anyways, that's all my thoughts on Control. Let me know down below what you guys think, and I'll see you guys on the next one.